What if I told you that one trade still smells like burnt toast? Not because it changed a roster, but because it changed the story NBA fans tell themselves about fairness. Picture the scene: a blockbuster swap, a GM praised in one city and pilloried in another, a superstar waking up in a new uniform, and a fired executive who is part villain, part victim. 9 months later, the headlines are quieter, but the bitterness hasn't left the room. So yeah, we can still be mad. And here's why that feeling matters. You remember the basics. Luka Dončić, a generational talent traded from Dallas to Los Angeles. The Lakers, who have long been the big, bright magnet of the league, somehow ended up with a player who reshapes their ceiling. The package that left LA, Anthony Davis, Max Christie, a future first-rounder, looks, in hindsight, like subway fare for a private jet. Dallas fans called it malpractice. The Mavericks fired Nico Harrison. The NBA winced. And the Lakers, they started planning billboards. Start with the most obvious truth. Trades change fortunes. That's how the league works. A single transaction can flip a city's mood, foundations of team building, and the playoff calculus for half the conference. But there's a second truth that cuts deeper and is the root of most anger. When a deal involves friends, backrooms, and questions about whether every owner got a fair bid, it feels like someone slipped a cheat code into the console. It's not just a loss, it's the loss of the illusion that everyone played by the same rulebook. Why does that burn so badly? Because sports are a public theater of meritocracy. We like believing teams win or lose based on scouting, drafting, and clever construction, sometimes with a pinch of luck. But when a trade looks like it bypassed open competition, you start to suspect that access and relationships trumped market fairness. Fans aren't just angry about one lost asset. They're mad at the idea that the market might be rigged in favor of those who share vacations and text threads with each other. That's not purely about jealousy. It's about the legitimacy of the game's institutions. Now, let's be fair for a second. Not every strange or lopsided trade is a moral crime. Front offices maneuver all the time, and there's a long history of teams making calls that look insane in the moment and brilliant in hindsight. A GM might roll the dice to save a franchise's window to please a superstar, or because he truly believes in a fit no one else sees. And yes, the Lakers are a destination no GM ignores. Players want LA, the brand pulls, that has real value. The move wasn't accidental. It was the union of market forces, timing, and institutional clout. But the fury that followed wasn't just about what was traded. It came from how it felt to the rest of the league, like a private deal that never had to weather the sunlight of a competitive bidding process. It's one thing to beat another team at the negotiating table. It's another to have people whisper that the table was set before the clock started. When the person who made the deal then gets fired and the narrative unspools into "he didn't take bids," the audience is left in the awkward position of being right to be suspicious and powerless to do anything about it. There's also a human side to the anger. Think about Mavericks fans. They watched a hero's arc morph into a rebuke. The franchise paid dearly for a public mistake. Players who had built chemistry woke up one morning and read headlines about their trade value. That disruption isn't abstract, it's an emotional wound. Fans aren't just spreadsheet addicts. They invest time, money, identity. When a team's leadership appears to mismanage that investment, outrage is almost inevitable. It's a response to feeling both betrayed and helpless. But what now? The firing gave a sense of punishment. A scalp in the front office looks like accountability, and it feeds the narrative that the system corrects itself. Yet it also leaves a sour aftertaste. Harrison is gone, but Luka is in LA, and history is mostly a fait accompli. No amount of moralizing can annul the player's jersey swap. You can get closure, but you can't rewind reality. That tension creates a lingering civic anger. Satisfied that something happened, but dissatisfied that the core issue, transparency in blockbuster deals, wasn't solved. So is being mad productive? I'd argue it can be. Anger that pools into policy asks and institutional pressure is useful. If fans and other franchises want a cleaner market, the place to channel fury is into mechanisms that reduce the chance of private circumvention. Clearer disclosure rules, more formalized bidding protocols for mega deals, or at least a league office review that's more public and rigorous. Leagues evolve when stakeholders push for rules that reflect principles they care about. Emotion fuels that change. It's human leverage. There's one more angle to hold tight: luck versus craft. The Lakers did not merely open a bag of money and find a star. Pelinka and the Lakers front office negotiated. They leveraged relationships. They sold a vision. Winning in sports is often about being both opportunistic and strategic. The Lakers' market power, the brand, the sponsor pull, the LeBron-era halo, all carry a price that often shows up in asset valuations. It's sloppy to call that purely luck. That doesn't erase the ethical discomfort, but it complicates the moral indictment. So yes, we can still be mad. The feeling is legitimate, visceral, and partly rooted in loss. But the next step matters more. If the collective reaction is just hot takes and furious tweets, it won't change the structural incentives that allowed the deal to feel unfair. If instead people ask for better transparency, demand clear governance, and push owners and the league to codify fairness into the process, then that anger becomes a reform engine. Finally, let's be honest about the weird, almost religious thing sports does. It asks us to believe that contests are both beautiful and fair. When something fractures that contract, when a trade feels private rather than public, we bristle. That bristle is worth listening to. It's the league's conscience whispering, make the game credible. Because if we lose faith in the market's fairness, we lose the delicious part of fandom, the hope that the next draft pick, the next trade, the next season could be ours. So keep the anger. Let it sting, but don't let it go to waste. Demand better protocols. Hold the institutions accountable. And in the meantime, enjoy the paradox. A move that infuriated half the league also created one of the most entertaining storylines we'll watch this decade. We can be both mad and mesmerized. That contradiction is the sport's oldest trick, and somehow it suits this moment perfectly. If you want the last line to sit with you, hate the cut, respect the game, and never stop asking who gets to make the rules. 9 months after one of the boldest, most controversial trades in recent memory, the Dallas Mavericks have pulled the plug on their general manager. Nico Harrison is out, fired after a disastrous start to 2025-26 and nonstop fallout over the Luka Dončić trade. AP News. This isn't just another front office shakeup. It's the end of a micro era. Harrison traded away a generational superstar, a player who had been the face of the franchise, and the move detonated into a franchise crisis. The deal that sent Dončić to the Los Angeles Lakers and brought back Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a single first-round pick left the Mavericks without their cultural anchor, and the timing could not have been worse. Dallas has stumbled to a 3-8 start this season. Injuries have ravaged the new pieces, fan rage boiled over in the stands, and ownership finally stepped in. Reuters. So, fact or fiction? Can you still be mad about the Dončić trade even after Harrison's firing? Short answer, yes. You can be mad for reasons that go beyond the usual